You love to be right, don't you? Everybody loves to be right, right? Well, sometimes you hate to be right. Remember this?
Hey, congratulations! Congrats! Kirby Smart improves to 0-3 against the SEC West on the road. So first off, all the Georgia fans that laughed at Uncle Lou for the last 6 months when I said if Georgia loses a game this year, it'll be on the road at LSU, keep laughing while we continue getting embarrassed and humiliated every time we play a freaking SEC West team on the road. Ole Miss in 16, the Barn in 17, and now the Corn Dogs absolutely stomped a mud hole! So congratulations, Corn Dogs, for putting me and the rest of the Georgia fans out of our friggin' misery for this year.
Last offseason, famously, or infamously, I picked LSU to beat Georgia in the regular season. Now, having watched all of last season, that might not sound like that big of a deal, but you have to take yourself back to last offseason. Expectations for LSU were not high at all. Most people had LSU winning 6 or 7 games. Some even had them going 5 and 7. I think the Vegas win total on LSU last offseason was at 6 games. Georgia, on the other hand, of course, was predicted to win the East, which they ended up doing, but that's not the point. Point is, 99.99% of college football fans, broadcasters, analysts, whatever, last offseason had Georgia as a better team than LSU and winning that game on the road at LSU. I came on in these offseason videos that I do and predicted Georgia to go to LSU and lose, which they did. And obviously that was one situation where I was right, but I was not happy to be right. Anyway, let's see how much I can get right this season with the LSU Tigers. Hey, good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on YouTube today, so thanks for watching. I really appreciate it also, and in addition to that as well, we're doing these team preview and prediction videos. I'm going to do a whole bunch of them, one, sometimes 2 videos a day from now up to the start of the season, which this year is August 24th, week 0, handful of games, including Florida at Miami. These are detailed, in-depth previews. We look at the rosters, who teams lost, who's coming back, impact freshmen. Then I'm going to put the schedule up on the screen and I'm going to go through it game by game, and I'm going to give you a winner and a loser for every single game, trying to come up with a final regular season record for this entire list of teams. Subscribe to this channel if you're not already. I'm going to post a ton of these preview and prediction videos. Make sure you hit the notification bell when you subscribe so you don't miss any of them. Thumbs up this video if you're an LSU fan or if you're enjoying these prediction videos that we're doing. I'm going to get to as many teams as I can this offseason before the season starts. The order that I'm doing these is based over on the Patreon page. I'm letting all the Patreon members pick one team for me to preview. I'm going to run through that list first. Then I'll get to suggestions from other places like the comment section here or Twitter, Facebook, email, that kind of thing. Shout out to Tiger Cat over on the Uncle Lou Patreon page. She made the suggestion that I preview the LSU Tigers for 2019. A lot of you know Tiger Cat from the comment section. Thank you, Tiger Cat, for all your support, not just on the Patreon page, but just in general. I really appreciate it. That goes for all of you guys over on the Patreon page. I can't tell you how much that means. If there's a team you want to make sure that I do this offseason, head on over to the Patreon page and get yourself signed up. There's a link in the description of this video that says support the channel. Just click that link. It'll take you over to the Patreon page. You can get yourself signed up. I would really appreciate it. All right, here we go. LSU for 2019. Let's wrap up 2018 real quick. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, a great season for LSU last year, especially compared to off-season expectations. And really, I think that's probably the fairest way to judge a team's season, right? Is based off of most people's expectations for that season. Hard to believe Ed Orgeron was listed on every hot seat list you could find last offseason. That's definitely not the case now. They proved a lot of people wrong last year. Ed Orgeron proved people wrong. Joe Burrows proved a lot of people wrong, and LSU ended up having a really good season. They, of course, went 9-3 in the regular season, plus a bowl win, giving them their first 10-win season since 2013, right? Who'd they lose to? Well, they lost to Florida on the road, of course, lost to Alabama at home, and Texas A&M towards the end of the season in a really weird game. Big wins, we mentioned, beating Georgia at home in the middle of the season in a top 10 matchup, and then a New Year's Six win in a New Year's Six bowl over Central Florida, which a lot of people were glad to see, right? A lot of LSU fans in that game to shut these UCF people up. I had you going 7-5 last year. I'll put the screenshot up from the end of my 2018 LSU preview. Here's what I had. I had you at 7-5. I had you losing to Miami and Auburn. Of course, you destroyed Miami opening weekend. You also beat Auburn. And then I had you losing to Florida, Bama, and A&M, and those did, in fact, end up being your 3 losses. So I had your regular season win total at 7. You ended up winning 9 in the regular season. So I was off by a couple of games. So not very good on my part on predicting the LSU Tigers for last year. But like I said, probably one of the most surprising teams in all of college football. If you look at where the offseason expectations were by most people who know what they're talking about, not a lot of people saw a season like that coming from LSU. So hats off to the Tigers for that. First 10-win season since 2013, like I mentioned. Vegas has you this year 9 wins. That's the over-under Vegas has you at. If you don't know what that is, it's just for betting purposes. Basically what this means is half the people think LSU is going to win more than 9 games. Half the people think they're going to win less than 9 games. So Vegas puts the win total at 9 and takes bets on both sides. That's all that means. So high expectations a lot higher this year compared to this time last year. All right, let's look at the offense and defense. We'll start with the offense. We'll talk about some players that you lost, who you got coming back, who needs to play better, weaknesses, strengths, that sort of thing. Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow played better last year than most people expected him to play. Of course, he transferred in from Ohio State, didn't get a lot of playing time there, sitting behind Dwayne Haskins and a couple of other guys. And then it sort of looked like Tate Martell was going to be the guy that took over there, so Burrow decided to go ahead and transfer out. And, of course, we know what's happened since then. Tate Martell has since left Ohio State. Justin Fields left Georgia and went to Ohio State, sort of a QB carousel there. He's got to complete his passes at a higher percentage. If that's the knock, if you want to knock Joe Burrow, I guess that's it. 58% completion percentage. Now, I mean, that's not terrible, but if you look around college football, most of the quarterbacks who people talk about as being really, really good are completing mid-60s when it comes to completion percentage. Trevor Lawrence, Jake Fromm, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, so forth and so on. He completed 58%. Got to do a little bit better than that. Now, he makes up for some of that with his ability to run, right? This guy, Joe Burrow, he really impressed me in the Georgia game, I have to admit. But he had 400 yards rushing for the year. That doesn't sound like a ton. It's not like Kyler Murray numbers putting up 1,000 yards or anything like that. But when you have a quarterback that's running for 400 yards in a season, that is a lot of extended drives, right? This is a lot of third downs where Joe Burrow took off running and got a first down. I can remember vividly the Georgia game. Georgia having him what would appear to be a sack in the backfield, and he took off, got a first down, extended drives, 7 rushing touchdowns he had. All of his receivers come back. We'll touch on that in a minute. So I think Burrow's numbers passing the ball will be better this year 2 in the system. LSU also brings in a quote-unquote passing coordinator, which is something you're starting to see a lot of teams do. In addition to an offensive coordinator, they're bringing in a passing coordinator. We'll see what kind of impact that has on Burrow. The LSU running back situation. Hard to remember a time when people were worried about the LSU running back situation, and I think that's true again this year. I don't think very many people are worried about the LSU running back situation. You do lose your leading rusher from last year. That was Nick Brossette. He's gone, but you played several running backs last year, and you always seem to lose a good running back or two every year, every couple of years, and you haven't had much of a problem replacing them. I don't think very many people expect you to have a problem this year. Your leading returning rusher is this Clyde Edwards-Helaire. These people with 3 names, man, I don't know if this guy's a serial killer or it's just a coincidence, but that is his name. 658 yards last year. But really, the guy to watch, John Emery, I mean, this guy was a big-time recruit in the 2019 class. I know he's a really, really good running back because Georgia wanted him really, really bad. And you know the history Georgia has with running backs over the last several years. I hated to miss out on this guy, but we did. So, you know, you guys got a good one there, in my opinion. I think we'll see a lot of him this year at LSU. So your running back situation, I mean, I guess you want to watch them play week one to sort of, you know, see how they are or whatever, but again, not a concern. Now, wide receivers. Looking at LSU's wide receiver situation as a Georgia fan, I could not be more jealous. This is insane. We lose like our top 6 receivers, basically. You return your top 6 wide receivers from last year and 2 absolute stud tight ends. I'm going to start with the tight ends. Both of these guys are 6'7". You guys know how I feel about big tight ends, especially in the red zone. But Steven, is it Sullivan? 6'7", 232. Jamal Pettigrew, 6'7", 241. I mean, these are 2 skyscrapers running down the middle of the field here. Good luck covering these guys, and good luck tackling them after they catch the ball. These are 2 legit tight ends. Now, when you wide receivers, I could name any of the 6. LSU, never hurting for talented, athletic, future NFL wide receivers, and that's the case again this year. Justin Jefferson, I guess, considered to be the best of the bunch, 6'2", had 875 yards last year, 16 yards per catch. The 16 yards per catch number stands out to me, not because that's a huge number for a number 1 wide receiver, but when I think of Joe Burrow anyway, I don't remember him, and maybe I'm remembering it wrong. He seemed like more of a possession type thrower, but 16 yards per catch is pretty good, so he can get the ball. That tells me that Burrows can get the ball down the field when he needs to. 16 yards per catch is really, really good. So your wide receiver situation is, I mean, it's just an embarrassment of riches there. It's pretty much just throw a dart at a wide receiver and it's going to hit a good one. The question mark on LSU's offense this year is going to be the offensive line, right? Not very good last year. Not very good at all. Second to last in the SEC in terms of sacks given up. You do get 4 starters back. Now, there's a couple of teams that fall into this category in the SEC this year that had bad to below average offensive lines last year, but they return a lot of those starters. So, you know, that's good or bad depending on how it works out this year. Now, you know, it could be that all those starters get a lot better this year and the offensive line as a whole then gets better. It could also mean that those offensive linemen just aren't very good, or some of them, you know, aren't SEC quality. Well, you know, we'll find out what the case is for LSU this year. But again, the concern when you look at LSU, no concerns about I mean, even LSU's 2nd and 3rd string quarterbacks are highly recruited guys who are expected to play well at some point down the road. So no quarterback concerns. I don't think you have any running back concerns. I've read a few things here and there that, you know, some people might have some concerns. Is this Hilary really a true number 1 SEC running back? I don't really think it matters so much because I'm that big of a believer in John Emery. And you've got a couple other guys, too, that have been there that can step in and run the ball for you, too. Wide receiver, one of the best wide receiver groups in America, top 5 or 6 for sure. And then the O-line, the one question mark. All right, the LSU defense. Similar to the LSU running back situation, no one has questioned an LSU defense in a long, long time. All the questions about LSU have been offensively, particularly the quarterback position, right? You know, you hope you have that solved with Burrow, but LSU's had, you know, an elite level defense for what seems like forever. That's going to be the case again in 2019. Now, you do lose 2 of your best players, probably your best 2, in linebacker Devin White and cornerback Greedy Williams. They're both gone to the NFL. These were all world players. They would have started on any team in America. They were absolutely legit. You gave up 22 points a game last year and 339 yards. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. 8 starters are back. So, yeah, I mean, it sucks to lose a Devin White. It sucks to lose a Greedy Williams. But you get 8 starters back and 7 of your 9 top tacklers return from last year's defense. So this defense isn't going anywhere. It's possible this defense could be better this year than it was last year. Let's look at the position groups. Defensive backs, if you don't know that LSU has good defensive backs, then you just haven't been paying attention to college football over the last 10 years. I mean, the argument seems to be between them and Florida, who's DBU. It really doesn't matter. The point is they both have turned out elite safeties and cornerbacks year after year after year. And that's going to be the case for LSU again this year. Safety, Grant Delpit. For my money, probably the best safety in college football. And LSU could make the argument that they have the best safety duo in college football. That's going to make Week 2's game against Texas, which we'll talk about in a little bit, very interesting, because Texas has one of the best defensive secondaries, particularly at the both safety positions of any team in football. So when you watch that LSU versus Texas team, you're going to be watching 4 of the best safeties in all of college football. But anyway, cornerback, you get this Fulton. He's back from an injury, probably a first-round talent if he can fully overcome that and get back to where he was before and live up to his potential or whatever. And then, like I said, the other guys are going to be there. You know they are. You just don't question an LSU defensive backfield. You got Grant Delpit back there as sort of the leader. Fulton may be the most talented corner you have. No one has any question marks about what's going on back there. I mean, who's the other safety? Stevens? I think it's Jacoby Stevens. Anyway, you're just loaded in the defensive backfield. Again, if you're any type of college football fan, I'm not telling you anything you don't know there. What's scary is that might not be the best position group on your team. Even though you lose Devin White, you may have one of the best linebacking groups. I said this about Tennessee yesterday. I probably would have to put LSU above Tennessee's linebackers for sure. You return Jacob Phillips. He's going to be sort of your Devin White replacement, I guess, this year, but he was second on the team in tackles last year. And the other 2 guys you have at linebacker, too, are potential all-SEC players. I mean, you're absolutely loaded at the linebacker position. And then defensive line, you're going to rotate 6, 7, 8 guys in and out along that defensive line. I don't particularly think there's a guy on your defensive line right now that's like superstar status, but one could easily emerge this season. 1 or 2 even. You're going to rotate so many in or out. These are all highly recruited guys. These are all guys that had scholarship offers from all the major programs. They're all big, fast, quick guys, athletic guys, perfect SEC defensive linemen in terms of size. I mean, no one's going to be surprised if 1 or 2 of these guys ends up standing out by the end of the year. But when I say there's no true superstar right now, that's not a knock on any one of them individually. It's really more of a compliment to the group as a whole. Georgia's hurting on the defensive line, in my mind. As well as we've recruited, we've missed on the defensive line. Where we've missed, you've swept it up because you've got 5 or 6 guys that you're going to rotate in and out of that defensive line that all have potential to be elite players. All right, here we go. I'm going to put the schedule up on the screen. You guys know how this works. We're going to go through it game by game. I'm going to give you a winner and a loser for every single game, with the goal being to come up for a regular season record for LSU in 2019. This isn't a best case scenario or worst case scenario video, so I've got to pick winners and losers. So games that I have you losing, yes, it's possible you could win them. Games that I have you winning, yes, it's possible you could lose them. I mean, this is me going out on a limb here and predicting wins and losses for every single game. You got a handful of games here that are already won before the game has even been played. Georgia Southern, Northwestern State, and Utah State. You get all 3 of those at home. They're lower classification schools that have no business competing with an LSU. People are going to mention Troy from 2 years ago. Hell, I mention it all the time when I'm arguing with the corn dogs. For trash talk purposes. This ain't 2017. You're not losing to any of these 3 teams this year. I don't see it happening. You should run away with those 3: Georgia Southern, Northwestern State, and Utah State. All right, we're just going to go through the rest of them now, game by game, and of course that starts with Week 2 with a huge road game at Texas. Texas and LSU, to me, are very similar teams in a couple of different ways. Led by their defense over the last few years. Think that they are on the verge of that elite tier and very anxious to prove it, right? Texas, of course, had the famous "we're back" quote after the Sugar Bowl last year. LSU also won a big New Year's Six Bowl last year. Both teams finishing with 10 wins last year, right? This is a huge game here. This is big for recruiting purposes between Louisiana and Texas, SEC versus Big 12. These are 2 top 10 or top 15 teams, depending on which polls you look at. Some people have Texas, I think, just outside of the top 10. I think everybody has LSU in the top 10. An absolute huge game here. Texas has struggled early in the season the last couple of years under Tom Herman, notably dropping games early in the season, each of the last 2 seasons, to Maryland. Got to get that turned around. What has LSU done early in the year? They absolutely embarrassed the Miami Hurricanes last year in week 1. Again, this is something where you look back on it now and it doesn't seem like a surprise that LSU absolutely humiliated Miami. But you have to remember where we were at 5 minutes before that game kicked off, right? Miami had won a division the year before and played for an ACC championship and made a New Year's Six Bowl. LSU had had a very disappointing season where they lost to Troy. Most people had Miami picked to win that game. They had Miami ranked higher in all the preseason polls. LSU showed up and absolutely dominated them. And it started a downward reaction for Miami and an upward trend for LSU that ended with, for LSU, a New Year's Six Bowl, and for Miami, a head coaching change. LSU outscored its opponents 107-36 in the first quarter last year. I think for LSU to win this game against Texas, that trend needs to continue. This is on the road at Texas. The crowd is going to be absolutely nuts. Now, LSU is not going to be intimidated by a hostile crowd at Texas. Texas has a great home field environment. Their crowd is amazing. But LSU plays at places like Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, the Florida Stadium. The point is, LSU is used to playing on the road in hostile environments. I don't think the environment is going to be much of a factor here. But you don't want Texas to get a lead and that crowd get louder and louder. If LSU can come out like they do most games last season and get an early lead, I think that'll give LSU a good chance to win. That, combined with the fact that Texas just hasn't looked good early in the season the last few years and LSU has, I have you as a win. So that puts you at 3-0 with Georgia Southern, at Texas, and Northwestern State all being wins. Then you have your first SEC game on the road, cross-division opponent at Vandy. This could be a tricky game. Vandy nowhere near as talented as LSU. Nowhere near as good of a team. Vandy probably one of the lowest home field advantages within the SEC. Nothing to worry about there for LSU, in my opinion. Vandy, a pretty good team last year. 4 of their losses were by 1 score or less, including that Notre Dame game that everybody remembers where really Vandy outplayed Notre Dame and should have won that game. Right? Vandy was 2-0 against the West last year. I think you win that game. I mean, if you're really looking for, some sort of shock game where a team stumbles against an opponent no one sees coming, maybe you think about the Vandy game. With all the experience and leadership with Burrows and them coming back on offense, 8 starters back on defense, loaded with upperclassmen on both sides of the ball, I just don't see Vandy sneaking up on you. Is it possible Vandy keeps this game close like we've seen them do a lot of times against pretty good teams in the last couple of years? Yes, that's possible. But I don't see you dropping that game. I have you with a win on the road at Vandy. All right, that takes you to your first bye week. Every team has 2 bye weeks this year. It's nothing new in college football. It's just the way the calendar falls this year. There's one too many Saturdays between the start of college football and the conference championship game, so everybody gets 2 bye weeks. You play a quarter of your season or a third of your season here, 4 games, and then get a bye week. I think that's a good spot in terms of where it falls on the schedule for a bye week. You play Utah State coming out of your bye week. A lot of times when you come, you want to get a bye week before one of your tougher games sometimes. We'll see where your second bye week falls, but no real benefit to this bye week here other than maybe resting up a couple of players that may be banged up through the first month of the season. Already said you're going to get the win against Utah State. That takes you into a big home game against Florida. That's your cross-division rival that you play every year. A really good game last year. You had to go on the road to the Swamp, to Florida, and they beat you in a pretty close, low-scoring game. Florida, another team with really high expectations this year. Another team that exceeded expectations last year. Another team that's ready to get back to competing for conference championships and maybe trying to make the playoffs. Dan Mullen, year 2. I see a lot of similarities again between Florida and Texas. I think the defenses in this game are both better than the offenses. I think both offenses, I don't want to say the offenses are limited by their quarterbacks, but I don't think either offense has a top tier quarterback. I like Burrows. Don't get me wrong. I'm a fan of Burrows. Especially likes what he's tough. Those third down runs are huge. Same for Felipe Franks. He's got Dan Mullen, so Dan Mullen's going to get the absolute most out of him. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game like what we saw last year. I think whatever team gets into the 20s probably wins this game. If this game was at Florida, I'd probably pick Florida to win, but it's not. It's at LSU. I have you winning again. You're undefeated after the Florida game. All right, on the road at Mississippi State. Now, you're better than Mississippi State. I don't like their coach. They're heading in the wrong direction, in my opinion. You're way more talented. You're going to have a lot of momentum. What are you, 1, 2, 3, 4? You're 6-0 here. Big emotional win at home against Florida. I think you lose to Mississippi State. I've got to go on a limb here. Listen, I can't just, well, LSU's favored in these games, so I'm going to pick them to win those, and they're not favored in these, so I'm going to pick them to lose those. No. I think you lose to Mississippi State. That puts you at 7-1. I don't need any reasoning. There is no reasoning. Almost every team in America loses at least one game a year that teams don't expect them, or that people don't expect them to lose, right? Am I going to be shocked if you beat Mississippi State by 30 points? No, you're a way better team than Mississippi State. I don't like the way they're headed, but for whatever reason, this strikes me as an odd place on the schedule, a big emotional win over Florida. This game is sandwiched between two of your biggest games of the year, Florida and Auburn. Both of those games are at home for you, but the Mississippi State game is on the road. I've got you dropping that game at Mississippi State. All right, you look to rebound against the Barners, and I think you will. I think the Barnes in for a rough year. I've been saying it all offseason. I'm not going to change my mind now. It wouldn't surprise me if this was Gus Malzahn's last year on the Plains out in Auburn. I just don't see them having a good year. I think you rebound after a tough loss at Mississippi State and come back home and get a big win over the Barn. All right, second bye week. So you play 4 games, have a bye week. Play another 4 games, have a bye week. That's perfect. That's great. I like the way that works out. Come out of your bye week. On the road at Bama. Loss. You're not winning this game. I'm sorry. Last year you were a great team, and you seemed to get better as the year went along. Joe Burrows was looking great. You showed up at home, everything on the line. The SEC West was on the line. Potentially a trip to the playoffs on the line. An SEC title if you could have, won the in Atlanta type of thing, and you just got ran out of your own stadium. Now, your defense played amazing. Amazing. Alabama had one of the best offenses probably they've ever had last year with Tua and those running backs and all those NFL wide receivers. An amazing offense, and you held them to 29 points. That's about the best anybody could hope to do last year against Alabama. I know they only scored 16 against Clemson. That game was an anomaly, believe me. Nothing against Clemson. Clemson was obviously the better team, and I think if they played 10 times, Clemson would have beat them 8 times. But 44-16, I don't think was an accurate representation of the team that Bama was. You held them to 29 points. That's great, but you didn't score any. Not even that. You struggled to get first downs, 3 and outs. Burrow looked lost and confused. You couldn't run the ball. It was just a complete and utter total mess and failure on offense. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but the problem is that's your biggest game of the year by far, every year. And this was the first year in a long time where this game, it was meaningful. It really meant something. Everything was pointing to LSU coming out and giving its absolute best in that game, and your absolute best was 0 points. I can't pick you to win on the road at Alabama. Not when Alabama has that much talent coming back on offense. I actually think Alabama's defense is going to be better in 19 than it was in 18. I'm sorry. I see no way you win that game. That's your second loss. All right, then you close out the season with 3 SEC games, 1 on the road and then 2 at home. At Ole Miss, and then home against Arkansas and Texas A&M. You're going to beat Ole Miss. I'm not a believer in them. Their defense is non-existent. You're going to beat Arkansas. They're one of the worst teams, not just in the SEC, but in America. I think Chad Kelly can get them to Chad Morris. I think Chad Morris can improve Arkansas. It's going to take more than 1 recruiting class to do it, though. I see another rough year for Arkansas. Texas A&M at home. Everybody knows what happened in this game last year, right? One of the wildest games we've seen, 6-7 overtimes. Referees doing all kinds of stuff. It was just a strange game. You came out on the wrong side of it. Texas A&M has to play at LSU and at Georgia in back-to-back weeks this year. At the end of the year. That's brutal. I'm going back and forth on this game because I'm wondering if Texas A&M is good enough to go 1-1 in that stretch of 2 games. They're going to be an underdog in both of those games, I think, because it's on the road. Could Texas A&M go 1-1 against at LSU and at Georgia? Maybe. Are they beating Georgia? No. I went back and forth here. Basically, what I'm trying to decide is, do I think LSU is going to finish 10-2, or do I think they're going to finish 9-3? I'm going to give you a win against Texas A&M and say you finish 10-2. So listen, if I'm wrong about the Mississippi State game, maybe you end up losing Texas A&M. You would still be 10-2. I'm pretty confident on the 10-2 number. Vegas has you, like I mentioned, as a win total of 9. I would definitely take the over on that for LSU this year. I think it's possible they go 11-1, like I mentioned in my best case, worst case scenario video. I also think it's possible you could go 8-4. That's not the point. That would be a best case, worst case. I think you're going to go 10-2 with losses on the road at Mississippi State and on the road at Alabama. All right, that's it. That's the Corn Dog preview, the LSU preview. Again, if you enjoyed this video, if you're an LSU fan, share it somewhere. I'm trying to get to 20,000 subscribers by the time the season starts, and I can't do that without you guys' help. So if you liked this video or another prediction video that you've seen, share it somewhere. Let some other people see it. Try to help me out. I would really, really appreciate it. All right, that's it. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you again real soon. Have a good morning.
Congrats to the Corn Dog fans. If you are a Corn Dog fan who has been in the Uncle Lou comment section prior to 3:30 today, then salute to you. Hell of a game. You guys dominated us. You beat us up front. You beat us on the back end. You beat us in the middle. Hey, we won the coin toss, and that was the last damn thing LSU lost all day. So congratulations to all the Corn Dog fans who have been in the comment section prior to 3:30 today. To the rest of the Corn Dog fans and any South Carolina fans, Tennessee fans, any other fan that wants to come out of the woodwork